Why, hello there, and welcome to episode 1 of the brand new, the very experimental Wrap Up podcast. And who better to join me on my first ever podcasting than the wonderful Nip Man himself, Michael Nip. Say hello, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
I didn't realize you were going to take a drink. I was just making a dumb joke.
No, it's alright. Oh yeah, if you guys want to wear crumpets, Ledwards.Merch.com.
I like that you scored that very valuable domain.
Yeah, I just bought it on Teespring.
Sure.
Okay.
So, you said that this is an experimental podcast, but you already have episodes lined up, you told me. So, like, what do I have to do to get this to bomb so hard that Is
I don't
that
know.
just, like, flop in the algorithm or something?
You could do what Daniel did in that game you guys played on Flash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've got some ideas lined up. I figured that with this, I'll if there's any bookish news or if there's been like a thing that we've all read, just anything really. And the reason I think this conversation is relevant right now, what we're about to have, is because for one, we both reviewed Daniel's book early, and the controversy surrounding it we've had opinions on it. Also, you actually did a disclaimer at the beginning of your video, which I did not. And I think maybe I should have, but then part of me... Oh, I just burped. I'm starting. But part of me thinks that maybe I don't need to. But you think that we probably should. So, I mean, I'd like to discuss that with you as well, to be honest.
Sure. You didn't wear your Breach of Peace shirt. You should wear your Breach of Peace shirt.
No, I'm not going to... I don't want to be a billboard. I'm actually a bit embarrassed that... Like, looking back at that review, I've realised I look like an advert. I just look like I'm like like he paid me.
I'm wearing a freaking Bridge 4 shirt, so I guess I'm an advertisement too.
Yeah, but it's different. I bought that shirt before the book even came out. I wore it for the pre-review. Well, they don't know that. We can pretend I bought it. They can pretend that I liked it so much that I ordered a t-shirt. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about authorial intent, reviewer spaces, reviewer integrity, reviewer and reader spaces, I'd say. It all centres around Daniel Greene's Breach of Peace release, because we both did early reviews. So let's kick it off. I want to talk about... Let's talk about reviewer integrity first, actually, because that's the thing that's closest to home for us, because some people actually hold the opinion as well that people shouldn't trust reviewers that get given arcs. And I just want to know, like, what do you actually think about that? Because you did a disclaimer. Well, tell my audience who probably have seen your video, but tell them why you did a disclaimer and your thoughts around that.
Yeah, so for like my whole life, I've always wanted to originally be a video games journalist, but journalism was something that's always interesting to me. But it was the idea, like, not real journalism, serious journalism, but like book journalism, video game journalism, music journalism.
That's serious.
Well, it's serious for me. It's real to me, dang it. But like the thing is that in those spaces, it's very important that there's a certain level of journalistic integrity, which, especially in a medium which we are in now, that's like, this is the relevant thing, is you can be given free products. So like if you're reviewing something, you constantly are given free things. And there's also the double-sided element of, like, not only are we being given free things, but the things that we are presenting are the very same tools that we use to grow our own audience. So when it comes to something like Breach of Peace, where you have a very famous author handing out arcs for his brand new book, and the book hits pre-orders on day one. Yeah. There is I think, very realistic criticism that you could have for reviewers who know that this is going to be a hot topic book. I
mean, I'd be lying if I didn't think that.
Sure.
I knew he would watch it. I didn't think he would shout it out. I didn't think it would blow up as much as it did. Well, for my small channel, but
even if Daniel hadn't talked about the book at all,
it would have done better than some of my other videos.
It's a book. It's a book that I don't know how you pick books, but I try to pick a mixture of books that I am just like super genuinely interested in, because I like a lot of fantasy. And there's also like, hey, that's probably a good book for me to grab because it's an important book. It might be getting a adaptation, or it might just be something that everyone is talking about for some reason, or it might be getting...
That's why I read First Law, because I was like, okay, I'll read it. Shut up.
Exactly. And I've picked up books for the exact same reason, or a sequel's about to drop or something. Like
Red Rising.
Red Rising. Well, that was more FOMO, but yeah.
I'm getting FOMO about that.
So well, and the Knife of Never Letting Go. I just picked up that book because they announced the adaptation with Spider-Man and Rey from Star Wars.
Oh wow.
But
oh yeah, what the thing with the weird thoughts that
yeah,
that looks weird. Yeah, that looks really weird.
So we have this topic where we're going to be talking about books that we know are going to help our channel grow, and then how do we approach these books? And so for me, I felt like it was important just to go ahead and preempt the presuppositions about
I didn't even think to do that, but now I feel like maybe I should have.
And honestly, it mostly just comes from me following the video game industry, where a lot of times game developers will know game journalists, and so if a game or like have worked at their studio before, so they're like, hey, I used to work at this studio, here's my thoughts of this game, understand that there might be a conflict of interest there, there's not a lot you can do about it.
So would you say this is a conflict of interest then? I only picked up the book because I'm a Daniel Greene fan. I've been watching him for a while. I wouldn't have picked it up just naturally. I wouldn't have gone, oh, that sounds cool. I do think it sounds cool, but I wouldn't have even known about it, really. My TBR is just popular stuff. Sorry.
Yeah. I think that's a very relevant question for someone that's going to be watching the reviews. Yeah, you mentioned when we were talking previously that you didn't even think about doing a disclaimer. You also mentioned that you didn't know if Daniel was going to review it, but
I did genuinely just want to review it and talk about it.
And it's a book that you want to review just because you like Daniel Greene's channel.
Yeah. Well, in the same way that I'll pick up I like Sanderson. I'll pick up a Sanderson book because it's Sanderson, and I'm excited to then talk about it. The only difference is I was a fan of Daniel Greene because of his content, not because of his writing content, but his visual content. But it's like it's this thing. For example, who is it? There's a dude in a film or a TV show that I liked that brought out a book, and it made me want to read it. But actually, there you go. Look, Stephen Fry, he writes books, and that's intriguing. I like the idea of picking up. What was it? He did. I think it was like Norse mythology, or maybe that was Neil Gaiman. I'm not sure. He did. Oh no, Greek. He did something about the Greek mythology, and that sounds interesting to me because it's like, yeah, Stephen Fry wrote that. Stephen Fry is cool. So it's like I'm a fan of Stephen Fry for his other content, but that enticed me to then want to read that. So I don't know.
That alone is going to, I think, bring a different perspective than if you're just picking up a fresh indie author that you find on NetGalley or something.
Yeah.
Because you're already going to have some kind of connection with that person.
And then, expectation. Yeah,
expectation. And it's a little bit weird with Daniel, too, because Daniel reviews books.
Yeah.
So
I am... The Stephen Fry example is a pretty weak example when we consider what Daniel's actual content on YouTube is.
Yeah. And I think that also potentially opens him up to a lot of criticism, because you could use the exact same criticisms that he uses on other people's books on potentially his own book, though you would expect him to be looking out for that kind of thing when he's writing. But the real, I think it is a legitimate concern of conflict of interest, because as a reviewer, regardless of whether Daniel sees it or not, when you pick up an arc for a book that we know is going to be big because it just hit the bestseller of Amazon, then you know that if you review this book, it's going to get a lot of views, which gives you an opportunity. And let's be real. Like, I think I heard a YouTuber once say that the only successful YouTubers are sociopaths. And so, like, honestly, if
you've got to be a bit of a weirdo to make a YouTube channel, though, haven't you?
For real. I mean, you got to look at yourself a lot of times, but you also have to think about the strategies about growing. And legitimately, the strategy about growing is, I'm going to talk about this thing that everybody's going to be watching. I'm going to try to talk about it before everybody tries to talk about it. And if you are trying to min-max that effect, you also might want to have the most interesting take, which is where another huge conflict of interest arises, because either having a super positive review that might get shouted out by that person's fans, or having a super, super negative review is like super, super going to get you clicks because everybody wants to know what you hate the new popular thing.
So, I mean, your disclaimer, so at the start, we'll give some context for anyone that doesn't know. So we obviously were some of the first reviews. I think I was like the fourth.
I thought you were first.
if we don't include Murphy Napier's review, hers was the first.
Oh, sure.
Then there was Lost in Discovery, he's
Okay.
got a cozy channel. I like him. He's got about 7K. There was this other YouTuber who I don't remember his name. I don't know who he was. He had about 500 subs. I think he's got a bit more now.
Yeah.
But he was like the second or third, and then I was the third small YouTuber if we don't include Murphy, because I literally got given in the arc. I asked for it. He didn't go, oh yeah, review this. I mean, why would he? But then I just read through it, and then got my review up ASAP. Because I knew it would be like a first come first serve sort of thing, and that is actually
screw you.
You did finish it first. Well, I mean, yeah, but you've got more of a life than me. You've got kids, so I literally read it, filmed it, edited it. So,
but yeah, so I mean, and then the thing that sort of brought up a lot of these conversations is Daniel shouted out your review, and your channel went from, how big was it before? You just hit 500?
I had 450 when I got the review, and now it's on like 1.3k, and that it actually got to 1k in like 3 days or something. So for a small booktuber, that sort of increase is insane.
It feels unreal. I've had a similar type of situation before where
when Murphy showed you.
Yeah, Murphy shouted out a Way of Kings review, and your channel blows. I mean, I don't know how you are. I don't want to. Everyone likes to say they're not super numbers focused, but like if you really want to succeed, you kind of are probably lying about it. And so,
well, yeah, obviously, I want to build a community. I'm pretty transparent about that. I want to sell a book one day. I want to do what Daniel has done. I'm not going to lie about that.
So you're going to sit there and refresh your subs, and when they're going up instead of one every couple days or one,
it's unhealthy, but
yeah, you sit there and you're like, oh wow.
What's funny about that though is that bigger channels must get that sort of numerical increase every hour or something.
I think they just don't check it at that point, like not the way that we check it.
Well, it's not as significant.
Yeah.
Like I've noticed that as well.
It's a percentage thing.
When I was a lot smaller, I'm still really small, but when I was a lot smaller, getting an extra 10 views was like, oh, 10 more people have viewed this. But looking at that review, which is on 6.8k, it's now 0.8. So now I'm like, oh, it's on 0.9 now. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely.
So it starts to, it's there's a name for that. I don't know what the name.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah, and so for example, a year for a 10-year-old is a long time. A year for an 80-year-old is nothing because they've had loads of them.
Yeah.
So life, like the years, just get quicker and quicker the closer you get to death.
So like that, I guess that's the reason I felt I needed to have a disclaimer. That is, for me, because my background is just wanting to have this like level of like journalistic whatever. That's the way that I felt that I would handle it. I still had comments of people saying, you know, you spent 2 minutes and maybe it was too long, but they were like, you spent 2 minutes of a 10-minute review doing a disclaimer.
I mean that's what I want to say is like there are two sides to. I'm conflicted. I mean,
sure.
Part of me is like, I think what your disclaimer at the beginning was very it was respectful. It had a lot of like integrity surrounding it, because you're saying, look, I have these possible conflicts of interest, so I'm just going to air those out. But another part of it did seem a bit like paranoid that people were going to think that.
It was. I mean, it was both, and it was like I said. I think I said at the beginning, I was trying to preempt some of that stuff, and then I still had comments of people saying, "Hey, I just don't trust booktubers on booktuber book reviews." And I was like, "Hey, I get it. Like, I legitimately think that's a criticism. I think
it's valid.
You may want to cut this part out, but like Lindsay Ellis, when she dropped her book review, there were a lot of people that seemed to review that book with kid gloves, I think.
Really?
Where if you listen to what they said about the book,
I don't know who she is. You'll have to update me.
She does video essays. She wrote her own book. It's a sci-fi book, and if you look at the reviews for it on like Goodreads, there's a lot of pretty negative stuff, and they're like, well, no, there's a lot of fairly negative things. But if you look at the booktubers,
they're all raving.
They're not all raving, but nobody really goes at it in a way that maybe it kind of seems like they might have if it was not Lindsay Ellis.
Yeah.
So like I think those concerns are extremely valid. In fact, I've actually heard from another booktube friend that we both share. I think it was Christy Lewis. Christy Lewis, I'll go ahead and say names. Screw it.
Okay.
Christy Lewis has read multiple different booktuber books, and basically said they were all cash-ins. Like, she said they were kind of all garbage. But of course, when they come out, because of this sort of scenario we're talking about right now, a lot of times they'll get decent reviews or positive reviews.
See, I do want fellow booktubers to read my book when one day when I'm like 90 years old it comes out. But I would really want to stress, I want the honesty. It's a debut. I want it to be good. I'm trying my hardest to make it good. But if it's not good, I want to know that it's not good. Because next time, I'll try and make it more good. And I will take the feedback into consideration. I don't know if taking it to heart is the right term. Because it's like, it is still a point of subjectivity. Like, I disagree with so many people on BookTube. Especially with things like prose. I've DNF'd Malice. I found it insufferable.
Sure.
But, like, loads of people love it, you know? So, I mean, I stand by what I said in Daniel's review. I've said that in, like, 3 videos now, but I really do. But you may be paranoid a bit, because your disclaimer, yeah, it makes sense to do that. And now, with hindsight, when I look at my review, it does feel like an advert. It does feel like I'm, like... Because I'm wearing the shirt, and I'm like, yeah, Daniel sent me an arc. Woo, Breach of Peace! And it's...
That's another concern that I think that is relevant is... the quote unquote like power size comparison where you are a fan of someone, they have 300,000 subscribers. This was your first arc, right?
Yeah.
So this is the first time you've ever gotten a book early.
Yeah, and it was exciting. It made me feel relevant.
Honestly, if you want to be freaking honest, that is exciting. I also would be lying if I said I wasn't excited when, like, basically I DM'd Daniel and been like, hey, congratulations, you're an author now. And he was like, do you want an arc? And I was like, absolutely. Of course I was excited about it. It's a book I wanted to read anyway.
Yeah.
I'm also a fan of Daniel's channel.
I'd already pre-ordered it before I asked for the arc.
I didn't pre-order because I have this really weird anti-pre-ordering crazy stance.
Oh, right.
But
I've never pre-ordered a book before in my life.
Oh, well, I guess I have. I did Rhythm of War. But
right.
It's this scenario of balance of power where someone that you really look up to sent you something that you really like, and it's going to almost inherently make you excited. So when you review this book, that's another thing to consider, and that's true for any arc, really. Anytime you're excited about a book, that's why kind of like authors, I don't want to say they can't go wrong, but when you have someone that's kind of a fanboy of something, the odds that they're going to like it are higher. And I don't even think that's inherently dishonest on any level. Like, hey, if you've read all of the books in the Cosmere that are out so far, and he drops another book in the Cosmere, the odds of you liking it after having read the rest of them is pretty high.
Like, I understand everyone's criticisms of Oathbringer. I really do. Andy Smith just ripped that book a new one.
Yeah.
Right? I agreed with nearly everything he said. In fact, my criticisms in my review are longer than my positives, and yet I gave it a 9, and I said it's my favourite one. Because I was already invested in the Cosmere. Obviously, I mean, if I was to look at it more objectively, the legwork that The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance did is why I love that book. And maybe Oathbringer on its own.
Well, it has its payoff is amazing.
Yeah, but it's all payoff.
You actually did a similar thing in the Breach of Peace review, where a lot of your comments were negative. I think it was framed in I really liked this. I'm planning on, I would like to read the second one.
I really want to read the next one. Yeah.
You still critiqued it a lot. I think that
my criticisms are longer in that video as well.
Yeah, I think that.
But they were more specific.
I'm not even trying to say that the people that have reviewed it thus far have been dishonest. I don't think that's the case. I feel like everybody has been honest as far as their objectivity can be.
One guy was like, his prose is terrible. I was like, damn. Yeah. So I mean, I criticize the prose, but I mean that's a bit harsh.
Sure. And so I mean, it's gonna be what it's gonna be, and I feel like people are gonna believe what they're gonna believe. But we have entered a space that is so far removed from the traditional classic days of media reviews, where all of us are potentially fans of each other's work. All of us are trying to basically make our own side hustle big. And I mean, do you have any like indie authors that you have in your like Discords, for instance?
Because
it happens pretty quick.
I've spoken to some of them. The guy, what's his name? He wrote Winds of. He's your mate as well.
Uri, yeah.
Yeah, he's not in my Discord, but I've spoken to him in other Discords, and like there are a few people like that. I've had a few emails from people that are also subscribers and things. And I've actually had a few emails now, and it's like they're not books that I would have conventionally picked up for my channel, so I don't necessarily want to just go to everyone that emails me, yeah, sure, because it could just be some random person that's made an Amazon Kindle themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
But like,
well, but the thing is that the lines are so much blurrier than they ever were before. Where it used to be like, I write book reviews for a newspaper, and this person is an author who had to go get traditionally self-published, or not,
yes,
traditionally
self-published,
traditionally published or self-published, and have to either go push it themselves, or they get marketing budget to do all these press tours, and there was a separation.
There's separate spaces as well.
Yes.
That brings us into the next point, because you're right, the lines are blurred. So this idea of there being reviewer spaces and reader spaces, I don't think it's that simple anymore, because a lot of the reviewers and a lot of the readers are also writers.
Yeah, Daniel himself sort of breaks that rule a little bit.
Completely. So does Elliot. So does I Writerly doesn't really review, but she does like literary criticism, and she's brought out a book. I mean, the lines are blurred, because I think a lot of readers want to be writers. Where do you stand on that? Because there's been a few videos out that have been criticising Daniel for getting into a space where he doesn't, like, he's not allowed. Because he's an author now, it's like, no, get out of our space, get out of our reviewer space, get out of our reader space. I don't know if I agree with that, but I'm conflicted. I want to hear your thoughts. So.
My thoughts on that are, I think that we have entered an age where the lines, like I said, are extremely blurry. And I also think that we have...
Brian Lee Durfee.
What?
Brian Lee Durfee, who wrote Forgetting Moon. He's got a booktube channel, and he reviews books.
Okay.
So,
I know that John Gwynn's kids review books. Like, they talk about their dad's books.
That's a conflict of interest, right?
Yeah, you would think so.
That's a huge one.
They were specifically... I don't think it actually... Here's the thing. Here's what it actually comes down to. My thoughts on review spaces and whether readers should be there, or... You know what I'm saying? My thoughts on this topic are basically, on a platform like YouTube, in an internet where there's so many freaking influencers, if you want to call us that, reviewers,
don't call me that.
Media, so like, in this world, I think that the only way to approach the subject is to approach it on a case-by-case basis based on the actual channel themselves. Whereas I think maybe before things like influencers were as popular, like, if my understanding is correct, YA booktube has understood the idea of influence a lot longer than adult booktube.
Right. I don't know much about that, so you'll have to educate me.
They were all about handing arcs to fans and getting that kind of hype built earlier, before like adult stuff is just now getting to that point.
I didn't realize how popular sending out arcs was. I didn't realize that NetGalley was a thing until a few weeks ago.
NetGalley is mostly for books that aren't as big, I think. Whereas, like, if you're big enough, it's different. But also, like I said, adult space is just now biting onto this idea. But I think before that idea existed and booktube had been around, it was a lot more of, I'm a person who likes reading. I want to talk to people who like reading, and this is my little hangout chat zone.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like...
That's what people have been saying.
And that's... A lot of people treat it that way, and I think that's completely legitimate. I think... Like,
it's their own micro book club on the internet.
Well, and there are people that legitimately make booktube content who just kind of do it for themselves, and that's their main goal. Like, or a lot of people will upload videos, and that is their reason for uploading videos, at least based on their own speech,
it's like their own
it's like, I want to know my thoughts on this book at this time. Like, it's almost like a video journal, and that's
for themselves.
Awesome. And I respect the crap out of that.
Why not make it private, though?
Well, there's different reasons.
But that's my issue with this, because one person criticised what Daniel has done, invading the reader reviewer space, by saying that some people don't want to be bombarded by his fan base, and that is valid. Like, yeah, he's got a big fan base, and if he gets involved with something, the likelihood of them then coming in and seeing it, well, that's how my channel got more subs. So it's the
most valid criticism, I think, for this topic, is the idea that someone could get...
I have a caveat.
Yeah, go ahead.
there's no expectation of privacy in a public place. Like this idea of someone going, oh no, I don't want all these people. It's like, you're putting yourself out there. You're putting your opinions out there in a public space. If 1 million people watched this video tomorrow and it was all dislikes, I'm not going to delete this video, because it's like, I've done this. This is my fault. I've put this out there. Sure. This is my choice to expose myself publicly. It's like people putting a political rant on Facebook and then at the bottom of it going, but I don't want an argument. Well, you just put it on on this public forum.
I think that there is an element of people not recognizing that fact. People not, and even if they do recognize it, they don't know the implications of that fact. I think that you could fall in love with the idea of sharing your video and having it go to the 100 subs that you have, and it being your happy fun club. Because let's be real,
it could get to 1 million.
But I don't think that people understand that, because like, well, I don't know your history with creating content, but I created content a long time before anyone saw it.
I've been doing it since I was a little kid.
Yeah, same.
Like,
so I think that there is, one, you may not understand it, and two, you may not realize what it's like when it accidentally happens. I don't know how many times. Oh, look at child stars. Anytime you talk to a child star and they're grown up, it's like, I didn't know what this was going to be like. I wouldn't have chosen this. And I think that is one of the concerns that certain people have, where there's been authors that have either intentionally or unintentionally sent like people to ravage someone before.
The Sarah Destin situation.
Sarah Destin is the main one that I'm thinking of, where she makes a comment and then someone goes and harasses.
Well, so in case anyone doesn't know, so that situation was a college student wanted to read something to do with civil rights or Black history or something, and the options for their book club at college was this book that they wanted to read that they thought was poignant or whatever, or one of Sarah Destin's YA novels, and they were like, I don't want to read some novel that's meant for like young girls, I want to read this poignant thing. And then she was like, oh, you're insulting my genre, and then this person got bombarded essentially. See, I do think that's bad, but I don't think it's the same as this Daniel situation, even though it's been compared.
Well, the downside would be what happens the first time. Well, I think there's the book hasn't come out yet, so anybody who would argue with it that hasn't read it probably doesn't have a case to argue about it.
That's what's annoyed me so much.
Well, but let's assume the book has come out. The realistic nature is people that are putting out negative reviews could easily get bombed by people that, and that's whether Daniel helps it or not. But if Daniel helps it, then he seems complicit in the act.
The controversy is that Daniel responded to a review, like some criticism within a review.
I think there's actually it's that. So the first there's probably 3 points. One, Daniel is shouting out reviews as they come.
But that's okay. He's just like sharing the early reviews.
People have problems with that too. I think that the same people that want that space really separate don't like that. Two, he's commented on them, which
other authors share their early reviews, right?
They do, but
doesn't Sanderson?
I don't think Sanderson shares reviews. He has shared, I think, other types of videos, like maybe lore dives and stuff, but I don't think he shared reviews. And then the response video was the
response video is the thing that's and because he actually responded on Goodreads.
I did not see that part. I just saw.
I've got it here, so I can read it to you if you want.
Sure.
So the fantasy, is it the fantasy review? Is that what it's called, or is it the fantasy inn? The fantasy inn. That's it.
Okay.
So the fantasy inn is the guy who runs it is called Travis, I think, or the guy that wrote it is called Travis, and apparently him and Daniel are friends. But basically, he wrote I really disagree with his criticism, and I actually found it kind of damaging because I found it to be untrue. So there's a difference between, like, I don't see it as an interpretation. I see it as like saying something that's untrue, but I'll get to that later. But people jumped on this, and so Daniel responded, and his response was, I totally see and understand your concern around the portrayal of police and the real world reflections. I really wanted the reader to struggle with liking these characters who, while they are the protagonist, are also religious cultist police, an idea that should terrify anyone. Literal religion police, I'm going to skim through this actually, because what he put at the end was I probably should have stressed the vileness of their actions more at times, but as I was writing from the police's perspective, they would not have seen it that way. It is a tricky balance with the setting I place myself in. And he said, "Thank you for the review. I appreciate it. I hope it's not inappropriate for me to respond like this. I would love to know how you think I could have reframed this dynamic better." And Travis actually responded on Goodreads by saying, "It's not my job to." I have paraphrased this, so people should go and read these properly. But Travis said, "It's not my place to give changes, but to just respond to the text," which some people have interpreted as slight shade. I don't necessarily think it was, because I'm pretty sure they're pals. But it's saying, like, yeah, it's not my job to give you feedback. I'm not your editor.
I mean, I would feel that I actually share that sentiment. Like, if I think that if an author were this is like maybe one of my hot takes, which is I don't think that
bring on the hot takes.
I don't think that creators of content should be listening to their fans when they tell them how to make their content. Because of the transparency of a lot of creators in the internet these days, a lot of times an author will have an idea of what they want to do for a story, and they'll either pitch it or sometimes do like an early version to people, and people will react, and it will get rewritten just to match what the fans want.
Isn't that what beta readers are for?
Well, it's different, because I think that there's a difference between especially beta readers and especially sensitivity readers.
Sensitivity readers, though, that is saying like you should change something because you're going to offend some people, right?
But it probably isn't changing. I don't know. I don't know what sensitivity readers always have to do, but I'm assuming it's not changing the core vision of everything that you're doing. I feel like if you've got to the point where you get to sensitivity readers and they're like, "No, the whole book's jacked," you messed up. Like, you probably did do something wrong. What I mentioned before was there are people in the review space that just want it to be this little private thing. There are also people that would like to turn it into, this is my journalistic space where I review books seriously. And, well, I say seriously, like, obviously both of our channels have a lot of goofs and silliness, but it's also something that we would like to consider ourselves professionals at some point.
Yeah, to some degree.
So I see myself as wanting to become a quote unquote journalist in this media sphere. I want to be considered a serious book reviewer. Obviously, I've already had my discussions about objectivity and why I think that objective reviews don't exist or whatever. But
yeah, I think I agree with you. Yeah,
the honesty and the genuine nature of things to be out there. I expect at some point to potentially talk to authors, like Daniel reviews authors.
I would love to.
I expect at some point to be able to talk to other people that are like big on BookTube. Like, I love doing collaborations. I'm older. I sort of know what types of things can happen on the internet. I've thought about these things. I've thought about the idea of interacting with other professional people on the internet. I've thought about what it's like to have internet trolls come at you. Obviously, no one's experienced it until has experienced it.
Yeah.
These are things that I want and I'm ready for. I've had, even before this, I've had other like smaller authors tweet out reviews before that I've done. Like, that was actually a self-published book. My very first BookTube, it wasn't actually on this channel, it was a different channel, but it was my first bookish review ever got retweeted by the author. Whoa. And I had that happen with a couple different self-published books. It wasn't very big at all, but like, that's something I've always accounted for. That's something I've always wanted. So it's not weird for me when that kind of stuff happens. Sometimes it's exciting, but I think there's a lot of people that don't want that. They aren't ready for that. They're okay with a lot of other readers doing something, but not authors. And the idea of, like, I think it affects their comfort level. They're okay talking to other readers about something,
but they are making themselves public.
But people don't think about it that way.
I feel like it's alienating, though. It's alienating Daniel. It's alienating authors. That's another thing that I think is a bit harsh.
I think that's it. Well, there's just different ways to handle it, right? Because I think Elliot dropped her book. What's it called? Peace and Turmoil.
Peace and Turmoil, yeah.
And I don't think she did any of that stuff. She basically treated it as if it was a separate thing. I don't think she interacted with a lot of things. She's given the book away, of course. But I think she completely avoided that stuff because that's her, I think, conviction on that area.
But I think she's on the other side of
I just don't see it as being a universal thing. I think it being different people are going to have different views on it. The problem is, if it is a blurry line, some people are probably going to have it happen the way they don't want it to happen.
It's like the reviewers do not want to have authors, like you just said, they don't want these authors breathing down their necks. They don't want to know that an author is seeing their review. And I don't know whether I feel like, yeah, but you're public. And it's like, why should the author have to be over there?
I see it as different. I see it as 50 shades of gray. And I also see it as a lot of like, people are going to, because it's so gray, people are going to come to a lot of different conclusions on it. And I will also say that I, in my own brain, separate what should be allowed to happen with like the optics of what's happening. Because there is a world, I've seen it in some instances, there is a world where someone reviews a book negatively, and then the author just sits there and subtweets like, oh, people say this about the book and people say this about the book, and they're basically a little whiny baby about it.
Well, I mean,
which I don't think that's what Daniel's doing, but you could do that. And I think
I'm not accusing Erickson. I'm not accusing Erickson of being like
I wasn't
that.
even accusing Erickson, but that's a good example.
But he does like openly,
he does do that.
Like, well, I don't know if it's, I haven't really seen much of it. I don't know if it's whiny or not, but he definitely does respond to criticism.
Erickson is the type of person that might pull the, well, you don't understand it, so that's why you don't like it.
I hate that card. See, that's the thing. Okay, I'm actually going to talk about the bop thing and why I found the breach of peace thing. I'm not going to call it the bop.
No, call it the bop, man.
Call it the bop. Okay, it's the bop. My issue with the fantasy in review, and the reason I think that Daniel was absolutely right to respond to it, isn't because that it's someone's take and the take was negative. It's because I think the take is false, and I don't think it's an opinion. I think it's false because the take was making the claim that breach of peace glorifies police, and it doesn't. I don't think that's a take. It doesn't. It completely is just that it just exists in the same way that Joe Abercrombie is not glorifying torturers and murder. In the same way that Lolita isn't glorifying paedophilia. It just exists. You can interpret it.
I see that as still being something that could be interpreted that way. Like, I don't think that's what he was doing.
But we'd read it. That's what bothered me, is that we had read it. I had read it. I was like one of the first few people that had read it and reviewed it.
But the person that made the comment, the Fantasy Inn person, also read it.
Yes,
I don't think there's something wrong.
But they had convinced that their review had made a lot of people go, I'm not reading it now. And I'm going, you guys, and then the loads of people that are commenting on that, but they're commenting on it based on a premise that I see as false.
But that's because it's your opinion on it. And I agree with your opinion on it when it comes to
I'm not trying to say my opinion is fact, but it is.
Well, you're trying to say that this is less subjective than like, oh, the writing was good, because that's more subjective, you think.
Because
but it
does just exist.
In an instance where something is not criticized, it could be seen as glorifying it. I don't even think that I agree with the sentence I just said.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
I also agree that is a take that people can have. People are allowed to have that take. And when it comes to like...
Michael, now we're going down the rabbit hole of everything is subjective. Morality is made up.
Listen, dude, I'm a religious person. I don't think everything is subjective, but when it comes to interpreting art, I think a lot of it probably just is. And so that's why when it comes to like this specific take, I both understand that criticism, even though I sort of disagree with it. I understand that premise, that criticism. I'm okay with that criticism. You mentioned how like it was convincing people to not read the book. That's why people. This is another weird thing when it comes to, I think, influencer spaces, right? We cultivate audiences that already are attracted to the things that we talk about the way we talk about them.
Yeah.
So it's entirely likely that if someone is reviewing the book saying that his book is too pro-cop, the other people that would read the book might read it the same way that person did. I don't know if it's a wig or whatever, but like if that's the way that he's interpreting it or she is interpreting it, then it's extremely likely that the audience that they have might interpret it that way as well.
I completely get what you're saying, that other people will interpret it that way.
And that's why when Daniel responds to it, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but I also say that when you respond to it, you're the same way we've talked about, you're opening yourself up to these kind of criticisms that people are going to come on different sides.
And he is opening up Travis to the criticism of like from his fans. Absolutely. Saying no, you're wrong. But they haven't read it either.
Sure.
That's what was frustrating me. I was like one of the few people that had read it, and everyone's saying this stuff, and I'm like, that's not even what happened.
People haven't read crap. Should not. I hate that Goodreads allows you to review books.
Loads of people had loads of people had 5-starred it before they'd read it, and 11% of the reviews on Goodreads when I last checked were 1-star reviews. Yeah, they haven't read it either. They're probably just annoyed because of the recent controversy.
So the thing we will agree on, and I think this is objective, if you haven't freaking read something, you can't have a valid opinion on it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, but then that's why people watch reviews and they make decisions based on reviews.
Exactly, and I think
I have opinions on books I haven't read.
Yeah, well, people watch different reviewers and they want different takes. That's why I think that the fantasy intake is completely legitimate. I think that I understand every single criticism against Daniel for responding, because when he responds like that, one, I've seen people think that his response was a straw man, which
okay, in what way?
In which he says he tries to take it from saying this review that I am responding to
was accusing him of being
pro-murder, just like pro-murder. That's the main point where he gets to in the video. I understand that criticism.
That was definitely hyperbolic.
Sure. Well, and that's the straw man criticism. I also understand, like, hey, if you want to be able to talk about your work openly, you have a platform to do so. I also understand if you do that, you could potentially send people at other people.
Okay, this is a great way we're in. We can go into authorial intent then.
Yeah,
and we'll talk more about his response then.
What's your views on authorial intent? Because I think we do differ here a little bit.
I don't know, because I do kind of believe in death of the author, in the sense because I don't believe that I shouldn't be able to read Lovecraft just because he was a knob. You know, it's like I don't necessarily care if the author is a bad person. Sure. I don't want them to have that authority and that power over the art that I love. Once it's out, and we are free to interpret it how we want as readers. But at the same time, the intent does matter. Because I did find that review to be politically accusatory in some ways. I know it was just like, oh, I found it to be glorifying cops. But by saying I found his book to be glorifying cops, he was also saying that Daniel was glorifying cops, in a sense.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, I know some people say, like, oh, but saying that the book is glorifying them and saying the author is glorifying them aren't the same thing. But it's like, but why would the book that the person had written be glorifying it, but they're not? I don't understand. It's like, it was almost like saying, oh, if you want to be hyperbolic, you could be saying, oh, it's accusing Daniel of, like, not being pro BLM or whatever and all the stuff that's been going on. And it's like, it was almost like it was saying, oh, I think Daniel has some pro-authoritarian cop leanings. And it's like, he's literally got a Barack Obama poster on his wall. He's the biggest raging lefty I've ever known. And I just thought it was really just a strange thing to say. It just, to even make the comment, oh, it seemed like it was glorifying cops. This is Daniel Greene we're talking about. He is really on the other side of that politically. Understanding that intent meant as soon as I saw that review, I was like, well, obviously he's not glorifying cops. You know?
To approach this on a topical level and to approach this on an individual level. On the individual level, I totally think that it's a weird take because I also know Daniel's political beliefs. He's very open about them. Yeah. So, technically, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. It's not a bad take based on the book, right? Because I think that they're interpreting the book based on how they want to interpret the book.
And the protagonists are authoritarian cops, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I just don't think the text is in and of itself glorifying.
I think it's sort of neutral on the issue. So on an individual level, I think it's a weird criticism. That being said, if you don't know Daniel as a person, reading that book and seeing the fact that it seems neutral on the fact that some insane crap goes down in the book, and it's not really moralized, I can see that take. I can see that take. I don't necessarily agree.
It sort of is moralized though, but it's moralized from the point of view of these characters. I think that
which
that's
they're mostly okay with it because that's their world.
They
and so like that's different ways to interpret it.
In the same way that Glock in the first law is a product of his own society. It's like it's his interpretation. He thinks torture's okay. That doesn't mean Abercrombie or the text itself is saying it.
So this is where maybe like it's slightly off topic, but it is relevant, is the idea of do books... pejoratively, I sometimes say, do all books have to be the Bible? Does every single book that has a negative thing in it from a character that you're supposed to like have to say, but this is not okay? Like, this
No.
guy killed somebody. He's not, that's, in real life, you don't kill people. This is bad. Does the book have to reflect the views of the author? And
Not at
does
all.
the book have to explicitly moralize or explain its own morals? And I absolutely say, why in the world would it have to do that? I don't think it has to do that. I think that there are, and Daniel said this in his response, but like, I sort of don't ever want a book to have a character do something bad and then have to explicitly be like, now remember, kids, that's not okay. Like,
yeah, it's like we're not idiots.
But I think that there is a large reader demographic that sometimes wants that when it comes to certain actions.
But it's patronizing. Well, we can't figure out that the author doesn't
like,
think
some
this.
people want that. I don't want that, but some people may. And so if somebody is reading a book where that doesn't happen, I'm fine with that criticism. I think that criticism is wrong, but that's my opinion on it. So that's where I guess, like, maybe this is the most boring discussion of this topic ever, where it's like, I totally get it. I think everybody should be able to do what they want to do. And the problem I have is when you say this is always the way it has to be all the time, because people are going to interpret it differently. Like even with the tavern, what was it called? The Fantasy Inn?
Fantasy Inn, yeah.
Yeah. Fantasy Inn take. I can totally see that take. I think that maybe like,
I think it's valid.
As a reviewer, I totally understand almost everyone's points of view on most books.
Yeah.
Even if I totally disagree.
Ultimate devil's advocate. My issue, it's because it was affecting sales in a way, only minutely, but people.
Every time there's a negative review, though.
Yeah, but people were getting like saying, "Oh, I don't want to read this if it's glorifying cops," and I'm like, "It's not.
Well,
it's not glorifying cops.
It's not to you though, but it could be to them. If for them, they see a book
that's dangerous though.
They see cops doing bad crap, and they say it doesn't say this is bad in the book. They're never given any negative consequences for this in the book.
It's annoying because I do agree, but I don't want to. Because I think that's dangerous to be like, it's true to them. If everyone has their own individual truth, then what is truth?
Everyone has their own interpretation of a book, is what I would say.
Does it actually glorify cops? Not do we think it does. Does it?
Some people would say it does. Because it does not say that what they're doing is wrong. And there's also no consequences.
Yeah.
No,
you are right.
I don't think it has to come to this, but like Daniel's been like, well, actually it's going to turn out that they were bad the whole time in the other books. It's like,
but I feel like he is going to do that now.
He's definitely going to do that if he wasn't before. He probably was before, because if you actually look at what his political stances are, it was very obvious that he's not that pro-cop.
Also, he did an interview. He did 2 interviews. He did a Man Carrying Thing and one with Michelle. And in both, I believe he said his rough plans for the point of views.
I kind of wish he hadn't, because I don't think he should need to. But at the same time, I understand why he would want to do that. I get both sides of the issue. For me, it's like, well, if you actually know anything about Daniel, this is obviously not a message that he's going to clear. But people accidentally send the wrong messages all the time. And that's why I think that some of this stuff can matter. People accidentally send messages all the time, especially in the days before sensitivity readers. Well, we'll use an extreme example. Right?
We've only been using extreme examples. Don't stop now.
Behind me, I have this book, and it's called Twilight by Stephanie Meyer.
Not that abomination.
And in the book Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, it just so happens that she has a plot line involving werewolves that are Native Americans that can turn into werewolves, right?
Okay.
There is a lot of things that are handled extremely poorly in that book by like modern Native Americans have talked about it, and it's been, I think, rightfully criticized from a lot of different angles. She didn't mean any of it, and it's really not relevant to the story at all, but it may be true. That's how I see it. I think it's a bad critic. I disagree with the take. I think it's a bad take. I can also understand why that take exists, and I think they should be able to have that. I also think their reviewership is going to possibly agree with the people that are going to take that from the book are probably talking to an audience that would take the same thing from it.
I don't know. I mean, I think you're probably right. I just got annoyed because obviously I'd read the book. Only a few people had read the book at the point. People were making assumptions about the book before reading it. People were saying stuff about it before they'd read it, and I was like, I have read it, and I don't think it does.
You want to take another dive in? You're a fan of Daniel Greene's content.
It's not even that though.
No, you're a fan of Daniel Greene's content, and you see him being accused of something that you see as a moral evil, and you're going, but he didn't do it. He's innocent.
Yeah.
That's basically what you're saying in one of your videos. And
yeah, I got a bit like, I did get a bit defensive because I was like,
well,
obviously it's not true.
And so that's another instance where it's like, well, is this a potential
It's an authorial
conflict
intent
of,
situation.
yeah, is this a conflict of interest? Is this an authorial intent situation? Because now you're defending someone
because of their authorial intent that I know, because
Yeah.
I was already a fan of them.
Sure. And it's such a weird, complex web, which is why it's so great. I'm completely fine with people disagreeing about it.
So am I even allowed to actually review it then, as an unobjective fan?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I did it, and I feel like that there's.
But you did a disclaimer.
I did do a disclaimer, just because I felt like for me that was important. But I also don't expect that of everybody else. I also expect that if somebody's getting an arc of a Daniel Greene book and they're on BookTube, they have the same sort of preconceived notions about everything. And in real life, everyone should probably know that people that are getting this arc are fans of him, so they should know to take.
I'm gonna take a page out of your book anyway. If I do the next one, I probably will do the next one. I'll ask. I will do.
You should trash.
I'll do the same as you. Yeah,
because you'll get the first hot take, and if you get the first hot take, you get those sick clicks.
All them subs.
Yeah, when it comes to, if you want to bring it back to authorial intent versus the ways to interpret the book, for me, I sort of see it as sometimes a gray ground. My problem with authorial intent is I feel like there are instances. How do I say this without getting myself in hot water?
Stop dipping your toe in. Dive in that lake, Michael.
Your channel, you just say crap, dude. You have a certain gold level to you.
That's why I think this is good to have you here, because I feel like you're bringing me down to earth a bit.
Well, so here's the thing. Sometimes I just don't say things because I know that it's a hot button issue.
Oh, I revel in it, mate.
I think when it comes to authorial intent, sometimes an author being super, 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 super explicit about their intent with a book can extremely alter what the average critic thinks they can say about a book. So,
actually, that's a good point, because I know we know nothing about Joe Abercrombie, really. He's very enigmatic, so that allows a neutral view of the First Law. Whereas if anyone's seen Leanna's Library's review of Mistborn, she got annoyed by a lot of the overly religious stuff within it because she was already aware that Brandon Sanderson was a Mormon.
Sure.
And by being aware that Brandon Sanderson was a Mormon, it meant that a lot of the religious stuff because he has very heavy religious themes in his books, and if people go in with that sort of notion, they might feel like there's some sort of religious propaganda being pushed at them if they read those. I mean, I don't really agree.
Do you want me to get on my high horse about that? I think that if anyone thinks that Brandon Sanderson's books are super pro-religion, I think that maybe they've misunderstood. See, that's my objective take. My objective take is that Brandon Sanderson is actually extremely
Subjective take.
Sorry. Subjective take.
How dare
Unless I'm
you?
being sarcastic. Brandon Sanderson is extremely anti-organized religion in all of his novels. He is very
it seems that way.
Personal religious beliefs. He's extremely anti-organized religion in every single book I've read.
That's what it seems like. But actually, hold on a minute, because you're conflating the text with him. How do you know it's him?
Well, his books are all extremely anti-organized religion.
They seem that way, or at least
that's the way that I read them. And I think
at least the way that these organized religions are shown within the text, they seem negative to me. Some people might read them and go, "Oh yes, I really love how the Vorinism works."
I mean, yeah. Well, I have a video specifically comparing Vorinism to Catholicism and comparing the way that basically Vorinism went extremely bad in the Way of Kings to the Crusades. So, I think he's extremely critical. So, whatever. That's a completely side tangent.
Yeah, but she interpreted it that way because she had a perception of who he was.
Sure.
So the authorial intent, or how people perceive what they think his intent was.
That wasn't even Sanderson going into it. Let's do a different take. Are you familiar with the Poppy War series?
I know of it. I've seen a couple of reviews of it. I haven't read it. I don't really know a ton about it.
The author has been extremely vocal that one of her intentions with that series is to bring to light a lot of Chinese history that people aren't aware of, and some of the insane travesties that have happened.
Why not just it be a historical?
Because history doesn't sell, dude. Who the frick buys a history book?
Yeah, that's true.
So if you turn it into fantasy...
Hey, I like Sharp, Bernard
but
Cornwell.
and I think that you and I have certain views on this. Do you think that her being very vocal about the intentions with this book have probably affected the ways that people criticize this book or don't criticize it? Do you
I'm
think
not
that
sure.
I personally believe that there are a significant number of people that are afraid to critique that book on its merit alone, because they say this person is trying to do a very noble thing with this book, and there are portions of this book that are one-to-one transcriptions of real life horrors that have happened.
Well, Daniel mentioned in his review about he actually I think he praised that. I don't
Yeah.
I don't think it's relevant.
I don't think it should be relevant, right? Which is why when I reviewed the book, I had a pretty negative take on it. But I have seen reviews, and I will not name names here. I've seen a significant number of reviews
Name 'em.
of people that like that book, and the only thing they praise about that book, the only thing they praise about it is her intent, which is the historical.
Yeah, in that case,
comparisons.
the way
In
that
which
just blew my mind just proves I am all for death of the author. Then I do believe in death of the author.
There's other example. Like there's so many examples, especially any. Are you familiar with the Children of Blood and Bone series?
I know of it.
The Children of Blood and Bone series is a frick. The theme of the Children of Blood and Bone series, the author has been extremely, extremely vocal that the theme of Children of Blood and Bone is the Black experience, and I think she does an extremely good job of based on whatever my
That makes it tough to review, though.
It's based on when you review that book, do you review that book because she said this is the Black experience?
I would never review that.
Book? Well, you wouldn't.
I don't want to be accused of racism. I'm not gonna read
exactly,
that.
Right. So that's why I'm afraid to say some of this right now. But like,
no, I think it's a fair take. It's like you don't want to be accused of something. You don't want to. I'm really worried about having some takes about books, so I just won't read them because I don't want to step on that ice. To be honest,
it's one of those books where I think that it talk about silencing reviewers. When you say that the subject of your book is racism, and then you write a fantasy book, and your intent is to create a discussion around racism, how do you critique that book if you don't like the parts of the book that aren't the theme? Because obviously, no one wants to say that I'm pro-racism or whatever, like I'm a racist. At the same time,
I'm gonna edit that out of context.
At the same time, she is a first-time author who was given a book deal and a Netflix deal. And I think that if you look at that book from if you've never
did you not like the book?
I think the book is bad. And
Okay.
even it's weird too, because
racist.
when I first reviewed the book, I only reviewed it on the theme at first, because I felt like the author was so vocal about the theme of the book being the Black experience.
But their intent doesn't matter. Yeah.
I say when I read this book, I was like, okay, how did I feel she handled the Black experience in this book with whatever I know as me? And it's like, well, she did a really good job portraying that aspect. If you would have said,
communicating that to you, or
you could have said, what do you think about this book as a fantasy story? And I'm like, oh, it's not great. I actually do have a review on my channel for the second book, which thankfully she completely screwed up her own themes, so I had no problem criticizing it. But I was still afraid to post that review because I was afraid of people saying, you don't understand what she's trying to do. And I'm like, but it's a bad book.
Because you don't have that experience. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, yeah, that's actually a really tough one. I try to focus on technical writing in my as much as I can in my reviews, because that's what I'm learning. Yeah. And I think those sort of criticisms are easy to make without people getting mad at me.
I bet some people don't care, but
a lot of people don't care about prose. I mean, it can make or break a book for me.
I'm saying you may criticize just that and still get hit for, you didn't actually understand the way the book was supposed to be.
Yes, someone's gonna go, you just don't get it.
You don't get it.
But,
well, that's what Erickson says. You just don't get it.
Yeah, you just don't get it, man.
That's why, like, I feel like the book should be interpreted the way it is. I don't think that you should have this moment where you're like, I didn't like this book, and then the author's like, you just didn't understand. This is what I was trying to do, and you're like, actually,
no, you've changed my mind about Bop. You have.
So good.
I think whether, like, the fact that the Fantasy Inn decide, like, they found it to glorify cops. I mean, yeah, I already thought it was a valid take. I just completely disagreed it. But I've just come to realize and acknowledge that a lot of my understanding and issues with that was because of my understanding of Daniel's intent and who he is. So actually, to step back from like my knowledge of the author and just look at the book, yeah, it doesn't explicitly say that it's against it. It does. I don't think it explicitly says that it's pro it, but the protagonists are pro what's happening to an extent.
And nothing bad happens to them in relation to what they're doing. So,
I
I
still think Daniel's fine to respond to it, but I don't believe in the whole reviewer-reader space thing.
I think Daniel is fine to respond to it, and everyone else is fine to criticize it. That's like, I have the most boring take when it comes to all that.
Yeah, all of you just do it, man.
That's like, yeah, I've been accused of being a hippie before, but it's like, my take on it is, we live in such a weird, everything is gray. Like, my take on all of this stuff is, you're fine to have the opinion that you have, because you're going to have it based on what you've experienced. But at the same time, I feel like people just need to be understanding that everybody's probably going to fall in a different line. Everything is so gray when it comes to this stuff. Everybody's going to fall in a different line, and let's talk to each other and
and be respectful and be
cool
reasonable
and understand.
Hold hands.
It's so
come by
our. Yeah, man. I'll play it on my guitar. I got a guitar over here.
I mean, I feel like we should come to at least one conclusion. So one thing I want to get like a concrete whether we think this is legit or not. So you're not allowed to be oh yeah, you can all both do it in this one. Right, okay.
Okay.
Do you believe that reviewers and readers are entitled to this space, and this space is theirs, and that authors are not allowed to enter that space? Or do you think that it's just one encompassing public space and it's a free-for-all? If authors want to enter this space, they can enter this space. Or do you agree with the people that have been saying, as an author, Daniel has no right to enter their space?
I think that it's going to sound like I'm bullcrap at first, but I think that when it comes to the issue of a dedicated reader space, authors should be careful when they enter some of those spaces, because if random fan of Daniel Greene who has 100 subscribers is only ever talked to those 100 subscribers and they're not ready for any of this stuff, and Daniel says something that accidentally sets a mob on him. I don't think he would do that intentionally, but let's say he says something that accidentally sets a mob on them. It's partially on him when that happens, because he sort of set that person up as a target. So I think that when it
you think he's got power then?
I think he has power. I think it should be a case-by-case basis. I think if someone wants to talk about my channel, or an author wants to shout out my review or discuss something in my review, I sort of make my content knowing that that's a possibility, and I sort of encourage discussions around that sort of thing. I also think that some people don't even have the technical ability to be like, I'm only going to post this video where these people can see it. They also may not be prepared. They may be younger. They may not have experience. I think authors should be careful when.
I think people should be careful when they make YouTube channels as well.
Well, yeah, but people are going to do what people are going to do, and so at that point it becomes on you to do what's okay. So I think that if it's a public to public interface, like if it's some other bigger platform, it's probably not a big deal. Though you're potentially going to invite hate on yourself, because it's going to be one public platform versus another public platform. I think if it's a smaller platform, authors should just be very careful about entering that space, because they could accidentally do something and the creator may not be ready for it. If anyone is asking, I have invited this sort of thing because I would like to be in this sort of journalistic type role. It seems like you are also in the space where like you want this to be all blended for you. Everybody's probably going to come to a different line there, and so I do think creators should be careful.
I do think that. I mean, I do actually agree with what you're saying, but I also just think it is a free for all, and we do open ourselves up to scrutiny by being in a public space.
Sure. I don't think people realize the gravity of that.
They don't.
But I think it's true. But yeah, I think people should just be very wise when interacting with other people when they have power, like Daniel might.
But then, okay, with the issue of power, we'll wrap up in a minute. But just quickly, like, is he the more powerful one, or are we the ones with power? Because in order for him to be successful and to make a living, he needs to make sure that us readers and us viewers still like him. So don't we have power over the author? Are authors actually that powerful when they rely on us?
If people were not dedicated fanboys and fangirls, the answer would probably be there's more power with the people. But you know that if not Daniel, we'll not say Daniel.
Oh, if he wanted to rally the Goblin clan,
absolutely. If he was like, freaking charge, go get this person, some portion of them would do that, and it would be very bad and ugly.
No, that's fair. You've given me a lot to think about. I actually think this has been a good conversation because initially I was annoyed because as a fan who understood his intent and seeing the backlash over something that I perceived to be untrue, it was frustrating. But stepping back from it a bit, I really understand more now why those takes exist.
Sure.
And I do still think that if an author wants to talk with the fans and the reviewers and stuff, they slaved behind that book for months or years sometimes.
Some people don't.
Yeah,
I think some people are going to want that. Some people are not going to want that. The criticisms are valid, but also some people, like you and me, get benefits when he shouts us out, which is another conflict of interest, but hey.
Yeah, well, whatever. People don't have to trust us.
He basically paid you if he gets you to monetization.
Yeah. Hey, he did pay me. He paid me in crumpets. Right, I mean, you guys do not have to trust us. You don't have to trust our reviews. I like to think that I'm honest and I have reviewer integrity, and I will try and be more self-aware, and maybe next time, if I get arcs, I will disclaim that. I did disclaim... I disclaimed the arc, but I'll disclaim more of, like, the relevancy around why I'm reviewing it, why I'm already a fan of this person, etc., etc.
We're all regular people with regular lives out here doing the best that we can.
And we all have opinions.
Yeah, so if everyone was just kind of chill, if everyone would just think about it from the other side for a little bit, we'd probably be better off.
And we could all come by our...
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. Well, I've had a lovely conversation, Michael, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was fun. I've been looking forward to it since you first mentioned it. These are some of the topics that I like. They're my hobby horses, I guess. So
I'm enjoying this format as well because obviously I do the jump cutty short videos for like my normal stuff. I like the idea of being able to sit down and have a proper conversation with people and keep it relatively bookish.
Yeah.
And booktube-ish. You know, this is just I think this is going to be a good way for me to have a change up on the channel. Like, so there's different types of content, and also to engage with people and have new guests on. And maybe in the future we can have multiple people, so maybe we could have a freeway conversation with some others and stuff.
Sure.
I'm sure you're happy to come back on one day.
I'm sure that this will be your lowest performing video since
it will.
Weeping Angels video.
I actually don't think it's going to do very well because it's long.
Sure. Wait, what the frick? You're just trying to get that watch time. That's the whole reason you started a podcast. You're like, I got 1,000 subscribers. I need the hours now.
Yeah, but they're all going to turn off after 10 minutes when they hear us.
That doesn't
chatting
matter.
nonsense.
That's 10 minutes, man.
Right. Okay. I'm going to wrap this up now. So, everyone, go subscribe to the Nip Man, Michael Nip, because he's an absolute hero and his channel is very wholesome and his takes are great and he's awesome.
Very kind. Thank you.
Please subscribe to me. Hit the notification bell. Comment and engage. I'm sure we'll both respond to some stuff if anyone has interesting points to make. I'm sure this comment section is probably going to have more of a conversation than other
ones. Should the video and comment space be separate? Should we be able to respond to the comments?
Oh, right. No, yeah, we need a separate space. No, I mean, it's all valid. So
Shout
please.
out your Discord, man.
Yeah, more intimate discussions can happen in Discord as well. So follow the Discord. Follow me on Instagram because I post stories most days. Get my crumpet merch at lukeedwards.merch.com. There's more stuff as well. There's I've got my Greek letters and it says it's all Greek to me. I've got a quote from my skit that says you know the skit, the really popular skit that I have where it's like, oh, the Hobbit, that's cute. I've got that in like Tolkien writing. Just dumb stuff. I don't expect anyone to buy this stuff, but I laughed out loud while I was making it, so that's what counts. But yeah, please sub to Michael because he's awesome. Thank you for coming.